Patrick Henry, the founder who feared power more than kings. Most Americans know the name Patrick Henry from one line: "Give me liberty or give me death." It's printed in textbooks, quoted on patriotic holidays, and often remembered as one of the boldest declarations in American history. But that speech, dramatic as it was, tells only part of the story. Patrick Henry wasn't just a passionate orator with a flair for words. He wasn't merely a man of his time. In many ways, he was a man ahead of it. While others were fighting for independence, Henry was already asking what would come next. Would the people stay free after the Revolution, or would they trade one form of tyranny for another? Patrick Henry was born in 1736 in Hanover County, Virginia. He wasn't born into privilege like some of the other founding fathers. His early life was marked by failure. He tried farming and failed. He tried running a business and failed again. But somewhere in those early years, he discovered something that would change his life and eventually the course of American history. He had a gift for speaking. More than that, he had a conviction that ordinary people should not be ruled by distant elites, whether those elites wore crowns or coats. It was through law that Henry found his calling. He taught himself the trade and passed the bar in 1760. In the courtroom, he was electric. He didn't just argue, he connected. He made juries feel, not just think. That same skill translated to politics. In 1765, as a relatively unknown member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, he made a speech that would thrust him into the center of the colonial resistance. The issue was the Stamp Act, a tax imposed by the British Parliament without colonial consent. Henry stood and delivered a warning. He compared King George III to some of history's worst tyrants. The room reacted with horror. Cries of treason echoed through the hall. But Henry didn't flinch. Instead, he responded with one of the most defiant lines of the entire Revolutionary period. "If this be treason, make the most of it." That moment signaled the arrival of a new voice, someone unafraid to call out power, no matter where it came from. Henry wasn't just criticizing Britain. He was putting forth a larger idea, that the people had the moral authority to challenge any government that overstepped its bounds. By 1775, the colonies were nearing open conflict with Britain. The debate wasn't just about taxes anymore. It was about whether the colonies should prepare for war. At the Virginia Convention held in St. John's Church in Richmond, Patrick Henry gave a speech that would define his legacy. He argued that peace was no longer an option. He spoke with urgency, clarity, and a sense of finality. Gentlemen may cry, "Peace, peace," but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. And then, the words that would echo through the centuries: "Give me liberty or give me death." It wasn't just a slogan. Henry wasn't offering a metaphor. He was ready to die. And that authenticity made his words real in a way that few speeches ever achieve. He wasn't trying to inspire the room. He was telling them the truth as he saw it. The time for negotiation was over. The time for resistance had come. The colonies did rise. The war came. And eventually, independence was won. Many of the revolution's leaders went on to craft a new government, build political institutions, and shape the fledgling republic. Patrick Henry could have followed them. He had the reputation, the influence, and the skills. But instead of celebrating victory, Henry grew more anxious. In 1787, as delegates from across the states gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution, Patrick Henry refused to attend. His reason was simple but telling: "I smell a rat." He didn't trust the direction the new government was taking. He feared that the system being designed would create a central authority too powerful, too distant, and too insulated from the people it claimed to represent. He wasn't alone in those concerns, but he was one of the loudest voices. In the Virginia Ratifying Convention, Henry stood firmly against the Constitution as written. He argued that it lacked sufficient protections for individual liberty. There was no Bill of Rights, no clear limits on the powers of the executive. The federal government could raise taxes, maintain a standing army, and even regulate speech, at least in theory. Henry feared that in their eagerness to form a stronger union, the founders were laying the groundwork for a new form of tyranny. He didn't mince words. He told his fellow Virginians that the Constitution would swallow the states, empower an elite class, and erode the very liberties they had just fought to secure. His arguments were sharp, sometimes repetitive, often emotional, but they resonated with many Americans who were wary of concentrated power. Ultimately, the Constitution was ratified, but not without a fight, and not without changes. The Bill of Rights, 10 amendments that enshrined freedom of speech, religion, assembly, the right to bear arms, and protections against unreasonable search and seizure, was adopted in large part to appease the concerns of men like Patrick Henry. Henry's opposition to the Constitution didn't make him irrelevant. On the contrary, it preserved his role as a vital counterbalance in the early republic. While others celebrated centralization and order, Henry kept sounding the alarm. He believed deeply in the sovereignty of the states and the rights of individuals. He feared that government, by its very nature, seeks to grow, and that without constant vigilance, even a republic could become oppressive. Despite repeated offers, Henry refused some of the most powerful roles in the new government. He turned down appointments as Secretary of State, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and even declined to serve again as Virginia's governor, a position he had already held multiple times. He preferred the independence of private life and the ability to speak his mind without political entanglement. He spent his final years at his plantation, Red Hill, staying involved in legal and political discussions, but avoiding the national spotlight. Though less active in the public sphere, he remained a voice of conscience, respected, principled, and uncompromising. Patrick Henry died in 1799. He was 63 years old. That same year, George Washington also passed away. It marked the end of an era, the closing chapter of the Revolutionary generation. But while Washington is remembered for leadership and Jefferson for philosophy, Henry's legacy is different. He was the reminder that freedom is fragile, that revolutions don't guarantee liberty, that power, regardless of who holds it, must always be checked. In the end, Patrick Henry's greatest contribution wasn't just rallying people to fight. It was reminding them why they fought in the first place, and what they stood to lose if they ever stopped questioning those in charge. He understood something timeless, that liberty is not a destination, but a responsibility. He warned us not to become comfortable under any banner, not even our own, because the real threat to freedom doesn't always come from a foreign king. Sometimes it grows from within the very institutions we build to protect it. Patrick Henry remains one of the most important and often overlooked figures of the American founding. His story is not just a historical footnote. It's a warning still worth hearing. In every generation, the people must decide whether to guard their liberty or surrender it piece by piece in the name of safety, unity, or progress. Henry chose liberty at all costs, and that's what made him truly dangerous. Subscribe to Hidden Republic for more untold truths from the lives of America's boldest voices. Because history isn't over, it's just forgotten.